Let's talk about factoring when we don't have a 1 in front of the x squared, or the variable that you're using squared. So we have a 2 in front of the x squared, so we can't simply do like before and just find two numbers that adds to get to this 1, that understood 1, and that multiply to get to that negative 6. Since we don't have a 1 in front of this x squared here, we have a 2, we can't do that. We're just going to add a few steps. It shouldn't be too difficult. What we want to do is take this entire first term here, the 2x squared, and multiply it by the last term there, the minus 6. That gives me a negative 12x squared. So now what I want to do from this point is I want to find two numbers, or monomials in this sense, that add to get to the 1x and multiply to get to the negative 12x squared, this number that we got from multiplying the first term times the last term. Now our rules from here will be somewhat similar. We're looking at this sign, tells us since it's minus, our signs are going to be different. And up here, this sign tells me my largest is going to be positive. So let's look at what happens here. Let's look at all the ways I can multiply to get to 12. I've got 12 times 1, 6 times 2, and 4 times 3. Now, my signs are going to be different. My largest will be positive. That means these are positive, these are negative. Also, one more quick adjustment. Since we're multiplying to get to an x squared term, and we are adding to get to an x, that means each one of these factors have to include your x. Because negative or positive 12 times negative 1x multiplies to give me negative 12x squared, and so forth. So we're looking at all of these pairs multiply to get me negative 12x squared, but which set is going to add to get me a positive 1x? And that's the positive 4x and the negative 3x. Now we're going to switch up a little bit again. Make a square and divide it into four parts. In the upper left-hand corner is your first term, 2x squared. In the lower left-hand corner is your last term, the minus 6. Now in these two other corners here that are left, we put our terms that we came up with from over here. And it doesn't matter where they go. I could have put the negative 3x here and the 4x here. It doesn't matter. Just put one wherever you want to put it. Now at this point we have to do some factoring as far as taking out the greatest common factor. And it works like this. I want to take out the greatest common factor between 4x and minus 6. Well, there's no variables in common, so there won't be a variable that we take out, but 4 and 6 have a common factor of 2, so I can pull out a 2. Let me erase this for a second, give me a little bit more room here. Now I want to take out the greatest common factor between the 2x squared and the minus 3x. Well, between the 2 and the minus 3, there's no common factor other than 1. But I do have variables in common, and when I have variables in common, I have an x squared and an x. I want to take out the one with the lowest power, which is just the x to the power of 1, so I can pull out an x. Now I want to do the same thing vertically. I want to take out the GCF between the 2x squared and the 4x. So between the 2 and the 4, the GCF is 2. And I have variables in common, x squared and x, so I'll take out the one with the lowest power. So the GCF between those two terms is 2x. Now between the minus 3x and the minus 6, whenever you have a minus sign in the first number that you come to, you always want to pull out that minus, pull out that negative. So I'm going to pull out a negative, I know that. Now between the 3 and the 6, 3 is common, so I can pull out a 3. There's no variables in common, so that's it. Now here's my answer. 2x minus 3 and x plus 2. And it'll look like this. 2x minus 3, x plus 2. And I got this plus right here because my 2 was positive. that's that. It's factored. One more example. First we multiply the first term times the last term. 4x squared times a plus 12 gives me a positive 48x squared. It's positive, so since it's positive, this tells me my signs will be the same. And this one over here tells me they're both going to be negative. So I need to look at all of the ways that I can multiply to get 48x squared. Now remember, we are now adding to get to a negative 19x and multiplying to get to a 48x squared. So I know that 24x times 2x gives me 48x. And I know that 16x times 3x gets me 48x squared. And so forth. I keep going. 12x times 4x. It's not divisible by 5. Now, if you struggle with your multiplication tables, what you can do to find these factors is just start taking 48 and dividing it by first 2. Then you get that. Then you can take 48 and you can divide it by 3 and get that. And just keep counting up. Divide it by 4 and get that. And then divide it by 5 and you get a decimal. So it's not divisible by 5. That's not a factor. Then by 6 and you get 8. So we have 8x times 6x gives me 48. And then divided by 7. It's not divisible. Then divided by 9. It's not divisible. And so on until you come up with the appropriate factors. So let's go and see what we have here. I know that both of my signs are going to be the same. They're both going to be negative. So each one of these sets multiply to get me negative 48x squared, but which set is going to add to get me negative 19x? And that's the minus 16x and the minus 3x. So at this point I draw my box, divide it into 4 sections. My first term comes up here. My last term goes down here. And then I can put my 2 terms that I found in any place that I want. And I want to start taking out my GCFs here. So I have a negative 4 in common there. Remember the minus sign's in front, so I want to take that out. Now here, this should not be a 13, that should be a 3. You'll probably wonder why I put that. Then here I can take out an x because I have x squared and an x. Those variables are in common, so I'll take them with the lowest power, which is just x. Then I go vertically. And here I can pull out a 4 because 4 is common between 4 and 16. And I can also pull out an x because x and x squared are common. Lowest power is x, so here I pull out a 4x. And here I pull out a minus 3 because the minus is in front. I want to pull that out. And then I have nothing in common with variables. So my answer is simply 4x minus 3 and x minus 4. Now, in factoring, one thing that I haven't shown you is you can check your answer by foiling what you got for your factored answer. If you recall, FOIL stands for first terms, outside terms, inside terms, then last terms. So if I have 4x minus 3 and x minus 4, and I want to check my answer, I can FOIL this out. I multiply the first 2 terms together. 4x times x gets me 4x squared. Then the outside terms together. 4x times minus 4 is minus 16x. Then the inside terms together. Minus 3 times x is minus 3x. And then the last 2 terms together. Negative 3 times negative 4 is positive 12. Combine my like terms, and I get 4x squared minus 19x plus 12. If we go back, 4x squared minus 19x plus 12 is what I had to start with. It's correct. So that's a way that you can check your factoring.